I took my revolver out. I put it in my mouth, and I prayed. I said, God, forgive me for what I'm about to do, but I'm losing my marriage, I'm losing my life with my family, I'm losing my job, and I can't take it anymore.
I do not know you, but I am your brother.
You do not know me, but I am your protector.
I will run into a burning building to save your life.
Though I do not know your name, I will take a bullet for you.
Though we've never met,
I believe in duty
and sacrifice of self.
Your family is my family.
Is my family. Your life is my duty.
What's going on, guys? Time for another special episode of Behind the Uniforms here on location in beautiful, sunny Florida. I love your state. Your state is so much better than my state of Connecticut, where it's dark and dreary all the time. We are out here for the Wounded Officers Initiative. They are putting on Heroes Weekend. Law enforcement today and our friends over at Enforce flew us down, and I am so honored to connect with so many people like you. Can you tell everyone who you are?
Well, first I want to say I'm very honored to be here with you Kyle. My name is Christine McIntyre Hurley, and I live in South Florida, this beautiful state, and I'm originally from New York.
I didn't pick up on that. I didn't get the accent at all.
Long Island, Long Island.
So, how long have you been out here now?
24 years.
Excellent. And when you were up there, you served?
Yes, yes.
Talk to me
yes.
a little bit about what you did.
I joined the Transit Police, New York City Transit Police Department in 1987. Back then, there were three departments: NYPD, New York City Housing, and New York City Transit Police. And now, of course, they have merged, and now everybody works under one, the NYPD. But back then, I was a transit police officer, which we patrolled the subways.
Now, you're out here for the Wounded Officers Weekend.
Yes.
Which says to me that you yourself were a wounded officer. Can you share a little bit about that? And then, more importantly, we'll talk into how you got to where you are now, that journey. But what happened?
It was right around Christmas, and usually it's really beautiful in New York City, very busy. I had been patrolling. Well, I went into the subway to meet a train. That's what we do. We get assignments, and we don't just go there. We don't have a car. We're not driving, at least the majority of us. I was doing 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning, and I was boarding some trains to get to the train that I was assigned that evening. And what I would normally do is, one of my training officers had always reminded me to go to the conductor's position, to tell them that you're boarding the train. So if something happens, they know that you're there. So I did that, boarded the train, saw a lot of people that I went to the academy with. There's musicians in the subway playing holiday music. So it was very uppity, you know, very, very cheerful, and I was really happy. Got onto the train, we started heading towards 59th and Lex, and the motorman, who's the person that's driving the subway, stopped the subway in the middle of the tunnel. And the conductor came to me and said that there was somebody on the catwalk. Now, if you don't know what the catwalk is about, say, 19 inches long. And it runs through the whole entire subway system for the most part. So that when there's construction or whatever being done, the workers can walk on the catwalk. It was cold, obviously. I remember at roll call, we were told to kind of be kind to the homeless. You know that there's tons of homeless people, and the majority of them are probably emotionally disturbed. So you're to take these homeless people, if they're in the system and they shouldn't be there, and escort them out of the system. Don't make any problems, don't arrest them. So when I heard from the conductor that there was somebody walking on the catwalk, of course that's a danger to a person when trains are riding through, to go and bring him into the train car and escort him off the system. So the train was stopped in the tunnel. The conductor opened the door, and I'm looking out. Now, like I said, between the wall of the subway and the train, it's about 19 inches. So I looked out and I see this guy coming towards me, and my whole thought is to bring him into the train. And he's coming towards me, and the train's full with people, and he stops, and I said, you know, I wanted again, sir, please come onto the train. And he stood there and looked at me. Obviously, he was not a normal, everyday person in the subway system on a catwalk. He brushes past me, and I said, you need to get onto the train. And he pushes me. So I'm placing him under arrest now because you touched me. And I said, get up against the train wall now. We're outside on the catwalk. People are all in the car. Get up against the train, and you know, I'm gonna cuff him now. I don't have my gun out. I had my nightstick out because it wasn't to that level. So he gets up, and I go in to cuff him, and he turns around and grabs my head, and he slits my throat. And so I you know, right away I felt this, and I was bleeding, and I didn't have my gun because my gun's in my holster. I'm in winter uniform. I have my nightstick. I slammed him over the head 3 times, and he didn't go down. He went crazy. So we started fighting. And remember, we're on a 19 inches of, and we're fighting. And he's coming down closer and closer to keep striking me with the blade. And he's shredding up my jacket. And I had my bulletproof vest on. He slit through the bulletproof vest, but didn't get any further in here. He slit my arm. Of course, he slit my throat, and we're fighting. And he's going further and further down to try to slit my throat again. And I grabbed on. Through the tunnel, there's this yellow, it's a banister. And because now, when I hit him 3 times, the 3rd time I hit him, my baton flew. So I can't get to my gun because he's trying to now continue to you know, slash me. And I'm blocking. And I grab onto the pole, and I'm falling back, and I figured if I'm falling back, that's going to be the end. So the pole starts to give way. And as the pole gives way, I pull it off, and I start hitting him with that to get some distance. And the one half that hit him cracked in half. And he grabbed that and started hitting me with that. I was able to back up a little bit more and then able to get my gun out. And by that time, he already turned from me and started walking to the back of the train. And of course, the first thing that you learn, you know, you can't shoot a guy in the back. He's no longer, coming at me or anybody else for that reason. So I start walking, and there's no radio contact in the subway in certain spots. There are dead spots. No matter what I'm doing, I had the radio here, and I'm calling and I'm calling. There's nothing. It's totally, not even air, nothing. And I keep walking to him, and I had my gun drawn. I want to see where he's going, but as I'm walking, I'm starting to lose all the feeling in my legs and my hands. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm gonna bleed out, you know, because, and I'm not gonna be able to hold anything anymore. So I get down, I see where he's going. He jumped down at the end of the train, and he's now walking across, you know, the third rail, whatever, the train tracks there. And I'm still trying to I turned back to go to where the doors were open on the train, and I'm still trying to radio in, and there's nothing. So I get into the car, and everybody's screaming. You know, all I hear are people screaming. And 3 people grabbed me. They screamed and said, you know, told people to get up so that they could lay me down and start giving me medical attention. And they happened to be 3 people that work for the airlines. And the one girl who had her scarf took her scarf and applied it to my neck and kept the pressure there. And there was a couple there that were there on their honeymoon, and he started playing with the radio and started radioing into operations. So they wouldn't move the train because they were afraid they might hit this guy. So they kept the train there. And finally, when they felt that it was clear, I told them while I was laying there where this guy was and a description. Finally, by the time the train got to 59th and Lex at that station, there were the press was there already. That's how long they had me, you know, sitting there. So they got me there. One of the transit cops who I've been friends with for the rest of my life, I mean, he's like my brother from another mother, Joe McGarry, he picked me up and he carried me up, I think 3 flights of stairs, almost fell. And I had my, 30 pounds, my belt on and everything, and got me up there. And, by that time, all I saw was sirens, and I heard sirens and the police cars. And they drove me over to Bellevue. And I mean, they got the guy. They did a show up. I identified him, and they took me into surgery. So.
What was the recovery like?
Well, I was really happy to be alive. On one of the reports, which really blew my mind later on, the 61, they call it, they had me DOA. But of course that was a mistake by whomever, wrote the report. My recovery time was, it was tough. I had been in physical therapy 3 times a week for 2 years, and then 2 times a week for the year after. But of course, the physical thing was different than the emotional thing.
How long did it, what was that process like?
Which?
The emotional recovery. Where do you begin?
Well, I think the first thing that I had to I had to pay attention to was my physical, because I really, I had cuts and bruises. I had staples in my neck. I had stitches inside, stitches outside. I had staples in my arm. But when I was in Bellevue, one of the guys came up to me and he said, "Whatever you do, after this, if you have any nightmares or any flashbacks, don't tell the job. Don't tell them that you're having any, repercussions of this, because they'll find a reason to fire you." So, I really loved the job. There was no way I was going to lose this job. So, shortly after that, I started getting the nightmares. I started getting the flashbacks,
How'd you deal with those?
I kept it to myself. I thought I was dealing with it pretty well.
When did you realize that you would need to get some kind of support to be able to deal with that? Or did you?
I was out of work for 7 months, and I would go back to the doctors, the police doctors, to get, for them to see how I was. And they wanted to put me back in, at least in a restricted state. So I said, fine, I'll do that. And I wound up going to the operations unit, communications operations, in Brooklyn, down on J Street. And it was a slow process, because I couldn't go back like full time. They were allowing me to come back like a few days a week, and that was fine. But what I saw was every time I would see a homeless person, or every time I heard a call on the radio, I got this copper taste in my mouth, which I had when I got hurt. That blood, I guess it's the blood taste. And I would have like an anxiety attack. But I wouldn't tell anybody, That was my own gig, and I was going to get through it, and I wasn't going to let anybody know that I was having these things happen to me. So, so I kind of just kept it to myself for a while.
So I'm sure this isn't going to be easy for you to talk about, but you've mentioned a lot about sort of the how you buried the emotion on this for a while. How you were afraid to acknowledge what you may not even have recognized at that point as post-traumatic stress. How did it sort of manifest itself? What happened next? Talk to me a little bit about that journey, because you buried it and you buried it, and you were having trouble sleeping at night, and then what?
Because I was going in, I was still on restricted duty, and I was going into work, 5 days a week, whatever. And I was having nightmares. I had been married at the time, and the one thing that really, when I reminisce, when I look back, is that when police officers or first responders, whatever, get into something and they start to feel that emotional hit, and if they're married or they have a significant other, and their whole psyche's changing, and that significant other is not a first responder, or they don't understand why you're changing and why you're acting the way you're acting, that could cause a whole a snowball effect. And my ex-husband, he was also in law enforcement, and you would figure that two people in law enforcement would understand. Unfortunately, he didn't understand. And I didn't know how to explain myself. I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know how this whole thing was morphing itself and existing inside of myself, because it was another existence that was occurring, and I had no control over it whatsoever. So in order to bury it or deny it or whatever, I started drinking, and I started drinking heavily, because every night I would have nightmares. And in order for me to be able to fall asleep, I would drink until I felt tired to fall asleep. So I would wake up, go to work, and the office that I worked in, it was the operations unit. And the operations unit was, everything's going on. You had all the radios that were taking all the calls in, so it was a dispatch station. So I would hear all the calls coming in, and anytime I heard a 1013, that's officers down, and that's what I was calling the 1013, I would get that copper taste in my mouth automatically. And I mean, as unfair as I think it was then that I was going through this, to the people that I worked around, I just loved this job so very much. I didn't want to give in to what was happening to me. So, my ex-husband, my husband at the time, we were fighting constantly, all the time. He didn't understand why I was losing all my ability to socialize. I couldn't go out. I mean, I used to exercise all the time. I couldn't exercise all the time. I was losing weight. The flashbacks were coming more and more. I started talking to a couple of my friends from the police self-support group, and some of them were going through the same thing. So that was good to know that I wasn't alone. One day, one of the morning shows came and interviewed some of us from the police self-support group, and listening to myself talk, because I hadn't been talking to really anybody about anything. It opened up the wound tenfold. So I went home and I basically just crashed, and I was a mess. I mean, it's embarrassing to say how low I was. I wasn't getting along with my husband. I wasn't talking to any of my friends. The majority of my friends didn't understand what I was going through. I wasn't eating. I was crying. I would sit in the corner of the house and just cry. And then I would have to get up and go to work and try to put on a totally different face and try to get through the day.
What was your rock bottom?
My rock bottom consisted of having a fight with my husband. He went off to work, and I sat on the couch. I took my revolver out. I put it in my mouth, and I prayed. I said, God, forgive me for what I'm about to do, but I'm losing my marriage. I'm losing my life with my family. I'm losing my job, and I can't take it anymore. And the phone rang, and one of my friends, Tommy, who knew what I was going through, and I don't know why, I stopped what I was doing, and I got up and I answered the phone, and Tommy said, I know what you're doing, and I'm telling you right now, I'm coming out there, I'm coming over there right now. Do not let me see you, your head blown off on your couch. Do not let me do that. So I just cried, and I said, I can't take it anymore, I can't take it. You know, I'm an embarrassment. Why am I like this? Why couldn't I be like everybody else that's been through everything? So he came out, and when my husband got home, he found out what happened, and basically, I relinquished all that I had, whatever little faith I had in still being a police officer. I had to just relinquish it totally. And I spoke to a psychiatrist. I mean, there's other things that had happened. I had gone to a retired transit police officer who was doing psychology. You know, he was a psychologist for cops a year before that, and he told me that I had post-traumatic stress severe, and that I needed to address it then, and I wouldn't do it. So then again, I denied it and buried it. So at this point, a year later, this is what came out. So from that point, I had to go and I had to go to the hospital, because I tried that once and I wanted to kill myself. I didn't want to live anymore. So I went to the hospital. Nassau County Medical Center has a psych ward there. My husband drove me. I had a lot of people behind me at that time that, you know, didn't want to see me go away. I went to the hospital. I think I had some antidepressants or something, and literally I had to kind of drug myself to go there, because I wouldn't have done it any other way. And I went there, and from that point on, it was freaking disgusting. It was horrible. Even though I went there, it was a nightmare in itself, because once I got in there, they had to examine me. They had to find out why I was there. I explained to them whatever I had to. A few hours later, they took me upstairs in a wheelchair to the psych ward. And Kyle, when I tell you that I really wish I was dead at that point, I can't even explain to you. Riding in the wheelchair, they had to get buzzed in. These big steel doors opened, and then they closed, and then another set of steel doors opened. I am walking into a freaking prison. Me. Here I was, you know, acting as a first responder, a police officer, helping people, you know, trying to make sure everything's going really great for everybody walking the streets or the subways. And here I'm walking in, I'm being, you know, ridden in to a lockdown facility. Not only that, but I got strip searched. When I took a shower, they had to have somebody there watching me. It was awful. It was disgusting. But even before that, if I can go back a little bit, before I hit that rock bottom, what happened, the transit authority is who we were working for at the time, okay? The doctors in the transit authority really wanted me to quit. They played so many head games on me that it was inconceivable to see that they could do this to some people. And they brought me to a brink where they would bring me in. They would say, okay, be here today. I would go in there at 6 in the morning because I wanted to get out. I wanted to go in and get out. They would bring me in. I wouldn't get out of there until 11 o'clock. They would make me sit there and wait and wait and wait. And I'm going through all this PTSD and I'm telling them I'm not well. You know, I'm trying to get help, I'm trying. And at that time, they really didn't look at you going to psychologists or psychiatrists. If I went to anybody, it had to be hush-hush, okay? So this one doctor turns to me and says, I'm standing outside. I go in there, they examine me, and I'm standing outside because I want to hear what they have to say. And the doctor says, she's fine, put it back on the street. And I walked in, I said, what? You heard me, you're fine, go back out there. And I lost it. I ran up to her or him, I can't even remember at this stage right now, and I almost threw them out the window. So, I mean, I was really losing it at that point. I really was. Because I figured, my God, I almost lost my life for you people, and this is how you treat like officers. You don't help them, and that's why now it's so important that they do that they help the cops, because you could be hurt physically, really hurt terribly, and then emotionally, if you're hurt, you have to hide it. I mean, some police organizations are addressing that, but a lot aren't. And they're still in denial, and they still don't let them heal in that respect. So anyway, being in that, from that point on, I had to have a sergeant and a PBA. Patty Townsend, my PBA trustee, he would always have to be there with me, with the sergeant. And then shortly after that, that's when I had that breakdown. But being in that place, I had to sit around with people that were arrested because of drug charges and stuff, and mingle with these other people. And it was absolutely, I went down to 88 pounds. It was sickening. It was horrible for me.
So you were in the hospital. How'd you get out?
Well, you have
How'd you
to go through you have to go through stages in order to get out. So I got out after a month. I was in there for a month. And really, I'm not proud saying all this, but if I can help one person and see that there are ways that this doesn't happen to them. I don't want this to happen to anybody, but you know what? If it happens, there's hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But I don't want anybody to get to where I was, to have to go through what I did. The departments need to address that. Police departments, first responders, whoever, you know, they're working for, they need to address that too. So how did I get out of that? I just, you know, baby steps. Baby steps in my faith. I have very strong, if I didn't have God in my life, I would definitely not be here. Not be here.
Anything you missed?
I miss it all. That's why I'm involved in different police organizations, because I didn't get a chance to do anything that I wanted to do. But when I got out, I had the opportunity to, to do different levels of police volunteer work, and that's what has kept me going. I'm with my transit police. I'm doing things with them, the reunions, 1013, FOP, Badge of Life. I'm with Badge of Life. Team South Florida. That's another police organization. I'm very honored and humbled. So God said, I'm not going to be able to be that in that capacity, but He gave me other avenues to, and I was in that book, Cop Shock, that book.
When God said, blessed are the peacemakers, He didn't say, blessed are the police officers. Peacemakers encompass a lot of different roles, and you're still doing His work.
What's really awesome about NYPD, and I'll tell you, this is the group that helped me survive, the Police Self-Support Group. Absolutely amazing people in that. They came, when I was going through the academy, they came to the academy to tell us about, hey, listen, this will happen. And there were a few guys, Richie Pastorella, Kathy Burke, Tony Semp. They would go to the academy and have like one of the last classes to tell them that, look at us, this is what could happen to you on your job, but it's okay, and we have an organization here to support you. And I went up to them at the end of their speech, and I thanked them. I thought that they had more guts than anything else to get up in front of the academy classes and do this presentation. And the ironic thing is that when I was in Bellevue convalescing, they came to see me. And from that point on, I joined the organization and I started doing the talks too. And they gave me, and all the people that go into their group, they're amazing. That was a great thing to have.
Awesome. Guys, every time you share this story, these videos, we have an opportunity to impact lives and to change the lives of whether they be wounded officers, their support systems, their families, their friends. And so I'm just super appreciative that you guys are all taking the time to watch this content, to share these videos. Thank you so much for coming on and being willing to share this story. Looking forward to attending the gala with you guys, and I just really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you. I'm freezing my
I'm
tush
sorry
off over
about
here.
that. Well, we'll go outside and warm up. Guys, thank you all so much. God bless America.